Strikes in northern part of the New Syrian refugee camp killed at least 6 civilians and wounded several others. In Peru, the President Dina Boluarte enacted the new judicial reform dictated by the parliament under strong questioning by the judiciary in various sectors of the country. And in Russia, the government affirms that the special operation in Ukraine aims to establish lasting peace in the region. Hello, welcome from the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news, and we start by going live to Caracas, Venezuela, with our correspondent Belén de los Santos, who is there for all the activities being carried out ahead of the summit tomorrow, Saturday, of ALBA TCP heads of states and government.
Hello, Luis. Exactly. We're here from Caracas. And as we were saying, this is a gathering of the Social Movement Council that is being reboosted, that is being reinstalled here. Let's recall what we were saying at our last contact, that ALBA was born with this idea of forming a mechanism that not only integrated the states at governmental level, but that also could coordinate just the different social movements, not only from Latin America itself, but also from the world, in that way becoming just a way in which different social movements, the peoples of around the world, even the peoples from the states in which the governments are not cooperating in this alliance that is the ALBA countries, those social movements may come together to coordinate different strategies. And that is the idea behind the Social Movement Council. And in this 20th anniversary from the ALBA TCP, the idea is that this mechanism is being reboosted. Let's recall once again that in the initial idea, the Social Movement Council and the Presidential Council had the same importance. So the idea is that we are looking at a mechanism that is able to integrate both perspectives. We just heard from Secretary General of the ALBA TCP, Jorge Arreaza, who was talking about the importance that the ALBA summit becomes summit of the peoples, and the social movements have a very important participation in that regard. The idea that Jorge Arreaza was saying, that we should not be afraid of that virtuous tension that may arise between the social movement and the government, because that is what leads to social change. That is what brings to the real demands of the people. So that is what we are witnessing here today. And as I was saying, they're here representatives from social organizations, movements, research institutes, not only from the region, but also from around the world. And we are joined now by Atul Chandra. He comes from India and is from the Tricontinental Institute. So thank you for joining us and teleSUR English. And I would like to start by asking, what is the relevance, what is the importance of this installment of the Social Movement Council that is happening today? And why come here to participate at this regional mechanism?
Thanks to teleSUR first. For me, it's a very interesting sort of mechanism which they are talking about. I have seen people coming out of social movements, becoming leaders, becoming very successful politicians. And also, when I say this, I'm not saying that they have not set up, I would say, very inclusive social policies. But I never saw this is when they became, they were part of the movement, then they become very successful politicians. But I've never seen a council where the social movements directly come and interact with the government. And for example, when these social movements directly come and talk, they are very well, if you look at it, they are the voices of the people on the ground. They are the voices of the larger masses and transcending boundaries. It's not only something which is, let's say, something of Venezuela, but something which is transcending boundaries in Latin America. And I think that's very, very interesting. That's what I think this experiment I would really like to see in our part of the world, where people from the ground are part of that, I would say, mechanism, the democratic setup, where they are able to express their concerns with regard to anything, be it environment, be it labor movement, be it women movement, be it which affects their day-to-day life, the health, education, and they are able to formulate policies directly by talking, by discussion, by interventions with the government. And I think this makes it very special. This experiment I have never seen. I didn't, and I've never heard about it before. But this is something which, for me, it's very interesting, where there is a space directly for the movements to be part of of one of the part of the government, where they are able to directly bring to the table their concerns. And I think that's interesting. I mean, we see in our part of the world, all the organizations, they have to come up with protest, with their movements, and then a delegation goes, and then they raise their demands. That's how we function. But have you ever thought where they are already part of it in the state machinery, in the government machinery, where they are heard not only when they are protesting, but also when the they say that they formulate policies for the people, but they have to literally hear the people who are on the ground, people who are representing those large masses, I would say.
Yes, and that was something of what we were talking about when discussing the importance of the ALBA mechanism and the 20 years and the idea of what comes now, right? That idea of being able to think up a mechanism that does not shy away from that tension between government or state entities and the social movements, but that, quite the contrary, tries to build mechanisms in which they can have direct action. Also, I wanted to ask you, one of the main things that the speakers have been saying, social leaders from all over the world, was the importance of gathering around to really having a comprehensive understanding of the geopolitical scenario that is here, that the geopolitical analysis is very important. It is key to then think of strategies, of mechanisms of cooperation, to see where the social movements need to be heading. What do you think in this regard?
No, absolutely, 100%. I mean, until and unless we know our subject, we have a nuanced understanding of the issues, and what are those systematic challenges we are facing because of something, and that's not something only internal. It's I mean, geostrategic, geopolitics plays a huge role. And I think you're correct, absolutely correct. I mean, you have to factor that in. You have to read, learn about it. You have to understand the international politics, how it works, how imperialism works, how it affects. And for example, we know countries which which has been, I would say, have been very social, with which believes in social principles, which believes in socialism, which believes in giving what people they deserve, but they have been forced. For example, we know countries in Asia, for example, Sri Lanka, we know countries in Pakistan, countries like Pakistan. For example, the IMF, the International Monetary Organizations, have been forcing them for structural changes. They are forcing them to cut the state budget. They are forcing them to take. I mean, how does the state then even deliver? For example, I'm talking about basic necessities of life in any civilized society. For example, education, for example, health. So I think these are I would say the context where if you cut the budgets and the state are unable to do what they promised or they want to do, it will take a huge toll. You are literally pushing your population at the brink of collapse. You are literally pushing them into poverty, into, I would say, problems, which then is going to erupt. I mean, there will be all sort of other issues which will be coming up.
Thank you so much, Adul, for joining us here in teleSUR English and let us have a better understanding of the importance, the relevance not only of the 20-year anniversary, but also of this mechanism that is the Social Movement Council. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Belen. Thank you.
Of course. So that was Adul Chandra from the Tricontinental Institute participating at the Social Movement Council in the ALBA TCP framework. The ALBA TCP is turning 20 years tomorrow, and these are the activities that are occurring here Caracas in the framework of that anniversary. And let's recall again that as the leaders just behind me are continuing to discuss possible ways of cooperation, this is not just leaders coming here to talk. These are very experienced movements from all over the world that bring here their specific territories and their specific action mechanisms that have to do with actions against climate change, that have to do with the production of food elements. They have been signaling, for example, the importance and the relevance of wide. So that is what is being discussed here, and as of thinking these strategies not only at a state level but also at a social movement level, and the ability of going back and forth from the governments that are leading this anti-imperialistic mechanism and the social movements on the territories, on the peoples around the world that are bringing in their power, their force, in order to make these social changes happen. So that is what we have here. Back to you, Luis. We'll continue having more information throughout the day.
Thank you, Belen, for the latest information and for your guest for all his inputs here from the South. We're going to continue with our news and we'll stay tuned with you in upcoming news briefs. Israeli forces continue their genocidal offensive against Palestine after launching several airstrikes against civilians in the center of the Gaza Strip. Israeli strikes in the northern part of the Nusayr refugee camp killed at least 6 civilians and wounded several others. These deaths come on top of an earlier massacre where 33 Palestinians were killed and dozens wounded after an Israeli bombardment of a residential block in Nusayrat. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry condemned these genocidal attacks and described them as a direct consequence of the failure of the international community's actions to implement resolutions on Gaza. Israeli military operations in Syria have reportedly destroyed approximately 86% of the country's anti-aircraft defense systems following a series of aggressive airstrikes. Over the past few days, the Zionist regime has conducted around 480 strikes, allegedly targeting military installations and infrastructure, claiming these actions are essential to prevent weapons from reaching extremist groups and to counter Iranian military influence in the region. The extensive strikes have led to significant destruction, including naval vessels and military aircraft, raising concerns among international observers about potential violations of long-standing ceasefire agreements. And in this context, Israel has destroyed the entire Syrian naval force, taking advantage of the overthrow of President Bashar al-Assad. All the military ships remaining in the port of Latakia in the northwest of the country were sunk in the last 24 hours by the genocidal troops. Despite the appeals of the United Nations, the Israeli forces also bombed military vessels in Bania and warehouses in Tartus, causing heavy explosions throughout the area. The Zionist onslaught has also hit several areas in Damascus, which remains under the control of the Tel Aviv allied terrorist group, now renamed Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. We now have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Peru, President Dina Boluarte enacted the new judicial reform dictated by Parliament under strong questioning by the judiciary and various sectors of the country. The judicial sector questions the congressional proposal to form a special high-level multi-party commission that within 90 days will study and present a proposal for the integral reform of the entire justice administration system. They claim that it lacks support since the origin of many of the problems that the justice system in Peru is going through are produced precisely by the executive and the legislature. They also affirm that reform favors criminal organizations and corruption. Also in Peru, Congress approved the entry of U.S. military troops with weapons into the country. The measure was approved for training and joint operations with the Army's Intelligence Command, the Peruvian Air Force Special Operations Force, and Navy, as well as the National Police. However, Congressman Guillermo Bermejo Rojas sentenced that the United States Army has not reduced drug trafficking, expressing his concern about the fact that the U.S. military has immunity to be judged for crimes committed outside their country. And in Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro led the inauguration of the Humberto Fernández Mourán University of Sciences. During the event, the Venezuelan leader affirmed that the new university institution will have the objective of promoting sciences and fostering the study of artificial intelligence in the face of the aggressions of the United States and its Western allies. Likewise, the Venezuelan head of state assured that 16 majors that will be taught at the UNC, ranging from nanotheology to philosophy, will have the mission of building a new modernity in the country, far away from any Western doctrine. Likewise, the Venezuelan leader reaffirmed that the old model of Western civilization is in decadence and is causing a strong crisis in humanity.
And it is a fact of historical uncertainty. The exhaustion of the old model of Western civilization has been leading to a terrible degradation and has brought Western civilization and humanity into a tremendous crisis, which they now want to solve with artificial intelligence by launching missiles, drone bombs. Which they now want to solve with artificial intelligence by managing social networks, states of opinion, states of mind. There is a decadence. They have aimed at the destruction of the millenary culture of humanity. They have aimed at the destruction of the nucleus of the family, of the values of the family. They have aimed at confusing in a set of topics to fill with the dark, cold cloud the destiny of humanity.
The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Keith Rowley, denied the signing of an agreement to provide the territory to U.S. troops. Prime Minister Rowley reaffirmed that the position of Trinidad and Tobago in face of conflicts in other countries has always been one of non-interference, asserting that at no time has an agreement been signed with the United States to make available the national territory to its military troops to respond to conflicts in third countries. In this sense, Rowley pointed out that whoever has affirmed something like that is not acting in accordance with the best interest of Trinidad and Tobago. He also assured that the country does not and will not support violations of the peace area. A study conducted by the Nicaraguan pollster M&R Consultores, entitled Youth Cosmovision, showed that more than 95% of teenagers support the administration of President Daniel Ortega. The survey, conducted nationally with young people between the ages of 13 and 29, highlighted that 82% of adolescents and 81.2% of young people affirmed that Nicaragua is moving in the right direction under the leadership of the head of state. It also detailed that 78.3% of adolescents and 71.3% of young people visualize a future of stability and economic progress for the nation. Experts affirmed that these results lead to the conclusion that the government model generates a collective identity that goes hand in hand with peace, stability, and growth opportunities. And Ecuador's Amazonian indigenous communities took over the headquarters of the governor's office of the province of Napo in rejection of the construction of a maximum security prison in the city of Archidona. After 10 days of strike, the Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of the Ecuadorian Amazon held a demonstration in response to the government's refusal to listen to the people. Despite protests in several regions, the government green-lighted the project. Trade organizations also denounced that the government did not consult them in advance about the construction of this prison, which, in their opinion, threatens the ecological balance of the Amazon and affects education and tourism in the area. We now have a second short break coming up, but before, we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. For a short break, don't go away. Welcome back. The Russian government affirms that the special operation in Ukraine aims to establish lasting peace in the region. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov says that in order to resolve the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, it is necessary to implement the agreement established by Moscow and Istanbul in 2022. Peskov also said that a proposal of the European Union on the creation of a coalition of several countries to send troops to Ukraine after the end of the conflict should be considered during the negotiations. Russia launched in mid-2022 a special military operation in the border areas with Ukraine to protect civilians in Donetsk and Luhansk from genocide by the Kiev regime. Meanwhile, the United States announced a new $500 million military aid package for Ukraine on Thursday. This is the 72nd disbursement approved by the administration of President Joe Biden, who has already announced, despite warnings from his successor, that he will continue disbursements to Kiev until January 20th. The new aid includes ammunition for HIMARS system, HARM, and Javelin missiles, as well as equipment for handling chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons. In this context, also the Secretary of State Antony Blinken ratified that his country will deliver to Kiev urgently needed weapons and equipment. And France's President Emmanuel Macron appointed his centrist party ally François Bayrou as Prime Minister following Michel Barnier's censure. Bayrou will replace Barnier, who resigned last week following the historic vote of no confidence over budget disputes, which forced him to resign from office along with members of his cabinet. Bayrou is a veteran politician, a three-time presidential candidate in 2002, 2007, and 2012. Peru inherits the same situation as Barnier, an assembly fragmented into three blocks without majorities and where it will be difficult to approve reforms or laws. In South Korea, lawmakers submitted before the National Assembly a new motion for the impeachment of President Yoon Suk-yeol. The opposition points out that to restore constitutional order in the South Korean nation, it is necessary to remove the incumbent president. The impeachment proposal, after being boycotted by supporters of the head of state, is expected to be put to a vote again during the plenary session of the legislature scheduled for this Saturday. The Korean president defends the implementation of the short-lived martial law, denying the accusations of acts of rebellion. And in Singapore, the Indian chess prodigy Gukesh Domarahu has become the star of his country after defeating the Chinese Ding Liren. At the World Chess Championship, the 18-year-old has become the youngest chess champion in history. Gukesh lived up to his stack of favorite in this year's championship final, held Thursday in Singapore, and smashed the record held by Russia's Garry Kasparov, who was 22 years old when he became world champion in 1985. The event has been a dream come true for Gukesh, who at only 12 years old became a Grandmaster of India and who 6 years earlier had declared his intention to become the youngest champion in history. Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.